Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today I had the opportunity to work on a reel, one of several that Joe sent in, and this is one of the biggest of the Penn Spinfishers. This is the Penn Spinfisher VI 8500, and Joe sent me in quite a few of the larger saltwater reels for service, and we're going to show you how to do that. We're going to show you how to take this reel apart, how to service it, how to keep it fishing for a long time to come. Now, the Penn Spinfisher VI does not have an automatic bail trip. So if you're doing this, evaluating a used one, and seeing that it doesn't flip, well, that's because it's a manual bail trip, so you need to be aware of that. Also, I'm going to tell Joe he's got too much line on here. When you line a reel, you should have about 1/8 of an inch reveal behind here. It shouldn't come all the way out to the edges, but we'll work around that. And we're going to get started by taking this reel apart. We'll show you how it's made, how to service it, how to keep it fishing for a long time to come. If you like these types of videos, if you enjoy seeing how to service a reel, learn a little bit more about the art of it, some of the tricks behind it, a little bit of the history of the reels themselves, who made them, when they were made, what kind of purpose they serve, well, then I would encourage you to subscribe to my channel if you enjoy that. If you do subscribe, please use the notification button. That will let you know when I'm posting the videos, and well, you'll get a chance to see if that's a video you would like to watch. And if it is, well, you'll get a first chance as soon as it's published. Okay, we're going to just put a rubber band on there for now. You can see how it just wants to run off the sides here. And well, that's never fun if you're out on a boat and all of a sudden the wind grabs it and starts running it off. Well, you can have a little bit of a problem there in snarls or wind knots or the like. So always line your reels and leave a little bit of a reveal behind it. We're just going to set the spool off to the side. We'll come back and address the spool in a little bit. The reel is running fine. It just it's been about a year, and well, it told me let's get it serviced. To continue with this, then, the next thing you want to do is remove the lower side plate. In order to do that, you need to remove the handle. To remove the handle, you turn it in a clockwise manner, opposite the way that you would turn the reel to crank in. Now, most of the time when I take my pieces and parts off, I'm going to use a parts tray to put the screws in the smaller pieces. Something like that spool and something like the handle, well, they're a little bit bigger and they're not as quite in jeopardy of getting lost as some of the others. So it's okay to just lay them to the side. Of course, you only see a little bit of my workbench here, and my workbench is what I call organized chaos. There's a lot of things laying on here. So if you happen to be one of those people, maybe you want to put all of your things into a parts tray. One of the things I do recommend is that you try to have a plan in place for what you're going to do with the pieces and parts when they come off your reel. There's nothing like starting to disassemble a reel, find out that you lay some parts here and other parts in a different place, and then when it comes time to reinstall, you're kind of in trouble. You're looking for the pieces. All right, what I like to do with these is I like to take all of the screws out of the case, lay them on my desk so that I can make sure that they're all the same size. It almost sounds trivial, but manufacturers do use different size and different threaded screws in different places. And you don't want to find yourself in a situation where you don't know where that screw belongs, or you put the screw in the wrong place because, well, you weren't paying attention when they were coming out. So a good practice is just lay them on your bench until you have all of the side plate screws out. And then you can find a nice home for them. My home is in a parts tray. That's where these 4 are going right now. I use a fast food container. I like it because it has 8 corners, and I can kind of organize my pieces in the corners so that they don't kind of intermingle and get messed up that way. This should have a little ring on it. It does. Notice that there's a little red sealing ring in there, and this one has nice bearings in it, and it has nice bushings in it, and they're sealed. So they did a good job on this one in terms of sealing that in. It looks like this is the first time this reel has been serviced. It has the original Penn blue grease in there. And what we're going to do today, we'll just take it apart. I'm going to clean up the old grease, check for any wear, and make sure that the reel gets reassembled and is tested and is ready to go again. There's two screws that I just took out here that hold the axle shaft in. Same idea, make sure that they're the same. They're flat heads. And you want to do a couple of things. If this is kind of new to you, one of them is to take pictures. I'm taking pictures here as I remove the axle shaft. I'm taking pictures with my video camera. You don't need a video camera, but at certain junctures, as you're about to remove some major assemblies, take a picture. Easy enough to do. Use that cell phone camera, whatever your image recording device is. And that way you'll know is when you go to reinstall that that's the right side up and that you don't want to install it the other way, if that's possible. It is possible on some reels, maybe not on this one. And as I take these off, I generally like to clean them right away. That way I don't have to worry when it comes time to reinstall that I missed a piece somewhere. Okay, I want to get the old greases off. That'll go into my parts tray. Next up is what appears to be a nice brass gear. It probably is one of those more interesting ones these days. Everybody's coming up with a fancy halogen or halcyon or whatever that metal is. Not sure which one this is, but they're well-made gears, well-constructed. You didn't see me service the bearing on that other side. These are sealed bearings, so you can't get oil or grease in there. You can make sure that they're nice and clean. And I'm just going to take the shim washers off of this now. The shim washers are there to take out the slack and the side-to-side movement, and you can see that's a sealed bearing in that side case. These two washers go on the face of the main gear. Clean out the old grease. In this case, we're just going to use a hard bristle brush. This is from a dollar store, but you can use a brush like a toothbrush with the same effect. Just clean out those channels, make sure that you don't have any old or residual greases in there. And I'm going to lay that main gear and the shims in the pack as well. There's only one more piece below here, that's the oscillation gear. This is held in by a Phillips head screw. I'm using a number 1 Phillips head screwdriver. That seems to be the most universal for doing fishing reels. I do have a set of micro drivers here when I get to the point where maybe on a bait caster or something got a very small reel. But for the most part, that number 1 Phillips head driver works. That one's nothing special. It's a Harbor Freight screwdriver. It just fits my hand right. It's kind of funny, but that's what you like to do. Clean off that oscillation gear. Make sure you don't lose the screw that holds it in. Notice that there is a Teflon washer behind it, and that goes in the parts tray as well. All right, one more piece of cleanup here, and that's the old greases that were surrounding that oscillation gear, and were probably thrown off in centrifugal force. Penn overloads most of their new reels because, well, what happens is many of these are made in China. The next thing that happens to them is they go into a warehouse, then they go on to a container ship, and then they go into a warehouse, then they find a distributor and they get sold. Well, all that time spent in warehouses, shipping containers and the like, it's usually hot and the greases start to evaporate. So some time ago somebody asked me that I think it was odd to take a new reel apart and service it, and I explained to them it's not odd at all if you want to go do that, but a lot of times manufacturers compensate for those climate changes and what's going to happen in transit and generally overpack, and that's what Penn does with theirs. There's 3 screws that are holding on the rotor nut. So we want to do the same thing here. Let's make sure they're all the same. Surprisingly, in some of these reels, you'll have one long one. Sometimes that's because it's holding to a different part of the assembly, or a short one. Maybe it's got an issue with the reach of the screw with that. These 3 are the same. Don't confuse those with the 2 that you just took off on the axle shaft. That's why these different corners of that tray work so well. Okay, we have the clamp, and notice that there's a kind of a clay-colored insert there. That's kind of to steady or quiet the movement on the back and forth on your pinion gear. You also should have a little ferrule inside here, inside the axle shaft. But those are water seals, and they take up the slack between the, here you go. That's your little insert that goes inside the pinion gear. I like that that nut because that nut, you can't over tighten it, and the top part there, that copper piece, is a water seal. With all of that out, we should be able to remove the rotor. And our rotor's got two things going on here. This is an eccentric. It just pulled up and out, but that little piece here is going to center on that dog, that slot. That's going to move in and out. So when you're cranking your reel, it's pulling this away, allowing free spin of the reel. And then when it's time to stop the reel, it's going to backpedal and throw it out. That throwing out is going to be a secondary stop, and it's on the back here. You can see the ridges inside the rotor, and that's the secondary stop on this. I don't know why there's grease back there, but there is. We'll take a moment to clean all of that out. Greasing a stationary part, well, doesn't do very much. I guess it would prevent corrosion, but this is not a metal case. I'm going to use a rod and reel cleaner, Penn rod and reel cleaner in this case. A little kitchen scrubby. A little bit on the scrubby pad goes a long way. Just going to use that to clean the inner part of the rotor while I have this open. No better time to spend cleaning your pieces than when they're off the reel. And need a little bit of reach in here. I'm use a cotton swab to do that, both sides. And what I also like to do, I just like to take a shot of penetrating oil on the seams where the bale wire connects to the rotor. And just kind of work that in. What we have next up is this collar with that anti-reverse hanging on it. Take a picture. You want to make sure you have it going in the right direction when you go to reinstall. And we have 3 screws holding on the pinion gear and anti-reverse clutch and the like. Notice that it's not a full circle here, that there is a flat side. The flat side faces the anti-reverse backup dog. There's 3 screws that hold that on. By now you've listened to me, you know that we're going to take these and put these on the table because, well, we're not sure if all 3 of them are the same size. Just good practice to do that. How did I learn that? I learned that from, well, not doing that and putting a couple of screws in the wrong place. I do remember the one in particular was on a Shimano Stratic, and there was a lower case screw. I put a long one in there, and it interfered with the worm drive for the reel on the downstroke. So it took me forever to figure out why that was going on too. These 3 screws are the same. I have another corner of my tray. Those will go in. Now we can take the collar off, and this should just pull right out now. Famous last words. There we go. That's out. And now we can just make sure that the rest of this case is clean. A little bit of grease up top there. Clean the inside. We'll leave that case right there because, well, we're not going anywhere. You have a assembly that's pretty common for the Penn reels. The top has a bearing in it, and the bearing also has a little bit of an insert here, or recess. That's going to go to the bottom. When you deal with your anti-reverse clutch, the clutch has a metal part facing up, and as we slide this off, you'll find a Teflon part below. Always want to check for the orientation of that clutch when you take a reel apart. In this case, the metal is facing up, and that's the way it needs to be reinstalled. Again, sealed bearings, and, well, we have a beautiful pinion gear here as well. I'm going to wipe that down. And you guessed it, we're going to use that bristle brush to pull through and get the old greases and oils out. I like to pull the greases and oils out into a paper towel, like I'm doing here, because if there is any dirt or old greases or the like that gets transferred, I want to leave it on a towel. I don't want to put it back in this reel or the next reel that I'm working on by leaving it on my bench. Using Penn Precision reel grease here, I recommend that you only use fishing reel greases. I'm using this one because it comes in a big container, not because I'm working on a Penn reel, but it doesn't hurt that, well, that's the Penn grease. I guess Penn would be proud. Let's take our collar and our anti-reverse assembly then and put that back on. If it's separated, no big deal. And then remember, you want the part with the recess facing down as you go to install that top bearing. That's your assembly for this. Going to go ahead and put that back into the case. And now we can take this little three-way, load that on, and go back into your case to get the 3 screws that are going to tie that down. With those aligned, get one started. And this is a good time while I'm assembling this to tell you, or if you have any questions on this reel or any reel in particular, maybe you're working on one, you've encountered a problem that you weren't anticipating, maybe you didn't take a picture, lots of different reasons. Maybe you just want to know a little bit more about the Spinfisher line. Maybe you want to know why this one has a manual bail and not a spring-driven one. Just leave those questions in the comment section. I do try to answer those, but I do try to answer them in the morning. So if you're watching this at 5 p.m. in the afternoon, just understand that this is not a 24/7 call answering service here, and that I do try to get back to you the next day. Okay, those go back on. They're all tightened. Now we know that the little eccentric goes on next, and that it goes centered with that little stud on the inside. At this point, you can put the rotor back on, so let's do that. Seat that in. Remember what we said, you have that little plastic insert that goes on top of the, or inside the pinion gear. And we have our rotor nut. I like to hand tighten these first. And you can't over tighten that nut, which I enjoy thoroughly. I can't tell you how many reels come in over tightened. And give it a spin. It spins nicely. Okay, we can keep moving then. Next step, what we want to do is install the oscillation gear. We've cleaned that already. That's why I like to kind of clean that in the front end of this. Want to get a good amount of grease into the teeth. You don't have to get grease in every cavity. What'll happen if you do, I guess, is it'll all spin out like you saw us cleaning off. Get a good amount in there. We can center that over. I have the screw inside. Well, had the screw inside, now it's out. And the screw centers on that little case. Again, it's a Phillips head screw. And just tighten that down. Good to go there. Make sure that it turns, that you've got it seated properly. Let's come back to our main gear. We've already greased the main gear up. Oh, no, we haven't. We've cleaned it. So we'll get grease on the back, which is going to drive the oscillation gear. Grease in the teeth that are going to intersect with the pinion gear. So the back one drives the gear that makes the axle shaft go up and down. The big gear on the front makes the rotor turn round and round. I'm going to install that now. Before I push all the way down on that, I want to take the crosswind block. The crosswind block, you only need to get the grease in the slot and on the back face. This tag goes under the little support piece there, and you just want to make sure that you're in that groove before you tighten this down. Well, don't put much grease on this, because that little plastic cap that we put on is going to it's going to just drive it all off. Before I put that in, I want to put my seal and my carrier in here. I'll go to my case and get those 3 flathead screws. And since they're all the same, doesn't matter which corner they go in. So just pick one to start and get the other 2 in. This screwdriver also has a magnetic tip, but that's not the answer to small screws all the time. If the reel has got stainless steel screws, well, they don't react to magnetism, so kind of out of luck. This one just seems to hold the teeth, and of course, as I say that, I drop it, but it seems to be able to kind of hold it firm while you go to put it in there. All right, now that little tie down is in place. Now we can take that axle shaft and slide that through. When you're sliding it through, make sure that the flat part of the axle shaft is out. And if you do it right, or if you just plain get lucky, those holes will align easily. I'll go back into the parts tray now and get the 2 small screws that belong there. They may actually be the same screws as the screws that are up top, but I don't like to commingle the parts. Don't like to take my chances. All right, that's one. Here's your other. Sealed bearings, case. Let's just bring the case back on. Before I get any further, use that little rod and reel cleaner there to take off any film, or maybe you've transferred some oils or greases from your glove. And then the 4 screws, they're all the same. So let's go ahead and put that back on. I do notice that Penn uses Loctite, the cool Loctite on their screws. For the side plate screws, I do not reapply Loctite. I'm always afraid that the screw is going to get locked in and that you won't have access to the case and that you won't be able to service the reel any longer. Certainly stops the vibrations, but in some cases, well, I've seen reels come in that have used the actually used the red Loctite. That just drives me nuts. I'm going to go to a little bit bigger driver here, see if I can't grab that screw a little bit easier. Alright, so overall a very nice reel, high capacity, made for saltwater fishing, or at least deep lakes. I guess we could use these in quarry fishing. Has large capacity. This thing has a gear ratio of 4.7 to 1, and every time you turn the handle, it takes in 42 inches of line. Wow. Alright, those case screws are in. And just switch back to the smaller one for a minute, that last quarter turn here, just to make sure they're all nice and tight. And I do it in an X pattern. I want to make sure I have equal torsion, that I don't go ahead and bind the case somehow. And we'll just wipe off that little excess. Here's our handle goes on next. And we just want to take a look at the drags inside. These are HD 100 drags. That's kind of Penn's version of Carbon Tex. The drag washers inside the spool are held in by a retention clip. I just use a pick. And this is a spring, so please be careful with it as you do this, because it may fly. I just want to get in here because there is a lot of grease on this. It's okay to grease the drag washers. As I mentioned though, they tend to get over greased. And what you want to do here is you want to make sure that the inside of the cavity is clean. When you're working on top drag fishing reels, that's the one that takes the brunt of the dirt and seawater. So when those come in, you want to make sure that the dirt and microsalts and the like are cleared out. So this one uses a drag washer as a keyed washer. You're going to notice there's 6 points on there, and there's the grooves here. The first washer is going to go in. I'm not going to grease these. They're optional to grease. I'm going to use a keyed washer next. That's the round one with the circle. I guess they're all going to be keyed washers here because, well, these are acting as the eared washers, so it doesn't matter. One more of the HT100s. Last of the keyed washers. Find the groove and reinsert the clip. Let's bring that down and around. That's seated properly, and now we can put that back onto the reel. Tighten all of this down and give it a final test. See how we did. While I'm doing that, I want to thank our first responders and essential personnel for all the things you do to keep us safe and healthy and out of harm's way. We truly appreciate your career choice and dedication to service. All right, once you find that you've got it tight, just back it off, take the tension off those washers. Here we go then. Nice, even, free spinning reel. Remember, you're going to cast with it, but you're going to close that manually in order to continue. Very nice reel overall. I want to thank Joe for sending that in, and I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you like the video, again, please indicate that. If you want to see more, again, please subscribe. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, wishing you a great time on the water, and have a fantastic day.